It's a great honor to be listening to my Hespedim. Because Baruch Hashem, I'm well and alive, and thank you for your kind words. To stand in front of you on Yeshivat Ohr Somayach in a Beis Medrash, where 40 years ago I sat and listened to drushes, is indeed a great honor. Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis David. On a day when we mourn the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, once again we pray, we daven, we beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mizmor Shir, let us once again sing Chanukas Habayis, a re-inauguration, a rebuilding of that extraordinary binyan, that extraordinary home. And for us gathering together, appreciating and understanding the power, the impact that we can have on others, it's trying to reflect on areas of our lives that need to be built, need to be strengthened, need to be fortified, so that we can ensure that that power is maximized. Shimshon Full Hirsch points out that before Klal Yisrael received the Torah on Har Sinai, they received their mission statement. They received their credo. A job for every Jew, Mamleches Kayanim V'goy Kodosh. A Mamleches Kohanim. A kingdom where each one of us is expected to be a Kohen. A Goy Kodosh. A holy special nation with a holy special obligation, with a mission to be a Mamleches Kohanim and a Goy Kodesh. And it's an awesome responsibility. And this responsibility we share with every one of our brothers and sisters to help and inspire them to take up their responsibility. Remember, many years ago, one of the graduates of Or Lagola, Rabbi Yisrael Ohr from Canada, had his first position in a very beautiful shul in the centre of London, known as the New West End Shul, and it happened to be positioned just opposite Kensington Palace, where Prince Charles at the time was living with his wife, Lady Diana. And Rabbi Roll, being the interesting individual and special Jew that he was, never missed an opportunity to impact on other people's lives. And so the story goes that he once went to a very exclusive barber with his son David Simcha to have a haircut, and was a little bit surprised to see on the chair Prince William. And yes, according to the way he tells the story, Lady Diana was overseeing Prince William's haircut, with a few security officials around. And as she motioned towards leaving after Prince William had had his haircut, he, remembering that she had a few Sholem Bayis problems, and things weren't going so well at the time with Prince Charles, decided to introduce himself. And Rabbi Roll said, "I'd like to introduce myself. I'm your local rabbi, Maisa Shaya Kachava. And should you wish to be in touch with me, this is who I am, and it's a great honor to meet the princess. And here's my business card." And she was very polite and very warm and said, "Thank you very much for sharing it with me." And she left and went on with her way. At which point, Rabbi Roll picked up his son, David Simcha, and placed him in the barber's chair to have his hair cut. He said, "Just 1 minute. Do you realize you're sitting in the chair of the future King of England? Do you realize that he was just sitting there, and depending on what happens with the succession, there's a good chance that you're sitting in this chair of the future King of England?" But then he looked at David Simcha and he said, "But you're a king already. Because we're Mamleches Kayanim. We're a kingdom of priests. V'goy Kodosh. You don't have to sit in any royal chair because you are all royalty." And where does that royalty start? Where does that royalty grow? And how can we ensure that we give birth to royal families an impact on the entire royalty of the Jewish people. The proficient point out that the first mitzvah that was given to Klal Yisrael as they prepared to leave Mitzrayim was not the mitzvah of Chodesh. That was given to Moshe and Aaron to give to the Sanhedrin. The first mitzvah that was given to the whole of Klal Yisrael was V'yichu lahem ish ser lebeis ovos ser lebeis. An obligation was that everybody had to take their own korban Pesach, which they would tie to the bedpost, as you're aware, and prepare for the great moment of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Says Rav Shimshon Furl Hirsch, listen to the language of the first mitzvah that was given to the new Klal Yisrael. The Klal Yisrael who had grown up and were born, as if to say, through the struggles of Mitzrayim, we're now about to become free. Listen to the language of the mitzvah. It has to be aser lebeis ovos, aser lebayis. The first ever korban which was bought by Klal Yisrael as a new nation was bought in the house of our family, in each and every one of our own homes. And says the Mechilta on that posuk, do you want to know where the first Mizbeach or Mizbechos were? 2, 3 of them. They were the dam which was taken from that Korban Pesach and sprinkled, as Rikas Hadam is an essential part of every Korban, was sprinkled on the doorposts of every Jewish home. And that was the first Mizbeach. The first Beis HaMikdash, the first bias of Klal Yisrael, the first korban that was bought of this new, beginning to become free nation, was in a Jewish home. And the Mizbeach became the doorpost which allowed us to enter and exit into that wall. And friends, that was the beginning of a relationship between Beis HaMikdash Sheyibonu b'mheirav yameinu, and Beis Hamikdash, which we have in our home. The Bayis Ne'eman b'Yisrael, a true Jewish home, is the Beis Hamikdash in microcosm, in small. And it's very interesting, because the more we look at rebuilding Beis Hamikdash, the more we need to focus on rebuilding Jewish homes. Our own homes, and the homes of the people whom Yitz Hashem we're going to impact upon. It's no coincidence that the first marriage of the new generation of Klal Yisrael, when Yitzchok married Rivka, Chazal tell us that it was only once he saw the Ner Doluk, which had been in Sarah's mother's home, the Lechem, which had been in his mother's home, the Ananeach, which had been in his mother's home. Only once he saw those simonim did he know that his Rivka was a fair continuation from his mother, his mother Sarah. Say Chazal, because what he saw when he saw that light is he saw the light of Beis Hamikdash. When he saw Ananei covered, he saw the Ananei on top of the Mishkan of the Beis Hamikdash. And when he saw the miracle of the constantly fresh bread, he saw the Lechem Aponim of Beis Hamikdash. When he saw the home of Rivka, he recognized the home of Sarah, and that was a Mikdash Ma'at. A small Beis Hamikdash, and we want to build the big Beis Hamikdash. And it really is going to start by the way we build our homes. Gemara in Arvei Pesachim tells us that Rabbi Akiva had some advice for his son Rabbi Yeshua. 7 different pieces of advice. And one of the pieces of advice that he gives him is, Ba'al tekanes leveischa pitom. You shouldn't suddenly enter into your home suddenly. You should knock on the door. Now, we were always brought up as good Englishmen to make sure that you're very polite and that you're very well behaved. And of course, it would be very undignified to be going into a house without first knocking first. It's like you have tea at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You've got to behave yourself, you've got to be polite, you've got to be well dignified. Says Rabbi Akiva, no. I'm telling my son Rabbi Yeshua that before you go into a house, you have to knock on the door. Says the Mashal, say the proficient on the Gemara over there. Where does Rabbi Akiva get the idea that you knock on a door before you go? From the Kohen Gadol in the Beis Hamikdash, who on the garments of the Kohen Gadol he had bells. Says Chazal, why does he have bells on the Kohen Gadol's garments? So that when he made a step, people will hear him coming. And Rabbi Akiva says to his son, when you're going into your home, knock, because you're a Kohen. You're a Kohen Gadol. And just like the Kohen Gadol made a sound as he went into the Kodesh, we went into the Kodesh Kadosh, and everybody knew he was coming. It's not good manners. It's not being polite. It's building a Beis Hamikdash, a Bayis Ne'eman B'Yisrael. And says Rav Gifter amazingly, what's the message of the Kohen Gadol making sounds every step that he makes? Every movement that he would make a ringing sound when he was wearing those begodim. To teach us that every step that we make, there are reverberations. Every step that we make, there's a sound. Every step that we make, the world hears us. And when we open the door of our own home, we knock first. We were taught as children, an Englishman's home is his castle. Says the Torah, an Englishman's home is a Beis Hamikdash. A Jew's home is a Beis Hamikdash, a Mikdash Ma'at, Kamashmala. A Mikdash Ma'at. And one of the reasons that the Kohen Gadol's bell sounds is to remind him that he's not the Balabayas in the Beis Hamikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's the Balabayas in the Beis Hamikdash. And when we forget that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's the Balabos in the Beis Hamikdash, there's Chorban Bayis. And when we forget that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's the Balabayas in my home, then painfully, there's Chorban Bayis in my home as well. And Chazal tell us so often, in so many different ways, the same principle, the same idea. The centrality of what it means to build a Jewish home. The centrality of what it means to build a Jewish family. Perhaps one of the most famous psukim in Parshas Bolak, which we all know. Listen to these words, Ma'tovu O'alecha Yaakov Mishkan Asecha Yisrael. How beautiful, how special, how unique are the tents of Klal Yisrael. Says Rashi, Ma'tovu O'alecha. What was so special that Bilam noticed in attempt to curse, but really blessing? He saw that the doors of Jewish homes, the windows of Jewish homes were not open so that other people could see inside. There was a sneers, there was a protection of my home. There was a modesty, there was a dignity. I remember hearing from one of my teachers, another essence of that as well was, I didn't need to know what was going on in your home to be happy with mine. I don't have to judge my life by constantly saying your wealth, your success, your new car. I learned to understand I don't need to see what's going on in your doors, in your windows, because I'm Ma'tovu O'alecha, I'm happy with what I've been given by the Eibishter. But Rashi goes on to tell us as well. Says Rashi, what does Mishkan Asecha mean? What about the Mishkan? So Rashi says something else. Dava acher, Ma'tovu O'alecha. You want to know what a Mishkan is? Ma'tovu O'alecha. Ma'tovu Oyel Shilo Ubeis Olomin Mishkan. The same Loshen Ma'tovu O'alecha, which describes my house, my home, is describing Mishkan Shilo and the Beis Hamikdash. You see, friends, the deeper we go, the more we'll understand the building blocks of Klal Yisrael, Ma'tovu O'alecha. The Sela Beis Avos, the building blocks of a Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan, the building blocks is how a Jew builds their own home. We've heard the hashpah that those homes can have. The Satmar Rov is famous for pointing out that when a young couple get engaged, people say that the zivug should be Ola Yofa. that the zivug should go up and be beautiful. He used to say the word oila is also a play on words because it also could mean should number yofa. Should be oila, should be worth. He says, what's the gematria of yofa? It's 95. This zivug should be oila yofa, 95. Said the Summer Rebbe, the 95th mitzvah from the Torah is va'osa li mikdash v'shachanti b'seicha. That's the 95th mitzvah. And when we look at our homes, we need to examine them very, very carefully. Very carefully. And even though it's very true that my wife's chant has been makar of many more people than my droshes, no question about it. But we have to look very carefully again at the houses and the homes and the families that we're building. And really consider on this Shiva Osav of Tammuz, have I really put the effort and energy and investment into those homes? Have I made them the priorities that they can all be part of a rebuilt Beis HaMikdash? When a former chief rabbi, Rabbi Jakovovitz, was made into a lord and sat in the House of Lords, he was given the privilege to speak, as a lord can, to the assembled. And they were discussing divorce law at the time and the breakup of families. And in front of the august audience, he told them a Gemara. And the Gemara says that when there's a divorce, the Beis HaMikdash, the Mizbech itself, cries tears. When there's a divorce, when families break up, the Beis HaMikdash cries tears. And I met recently a former High Court judge who's changed his profession entirely. He was involved in matrimonial law. He's called Sir because he reached such a high level, one of the top judges in England. He says, the world's gone crazy. All I'm dealing with is more and more divorce and more painful ramifications for the children and the families. Do people not realize what's happening in society? The world's falling apart. So many children aren't brought up in a family with care and concern and love. Too many parents have got kids and they don't have time for them. What's going on with the world? He's changed his entire profession. He's opened an organization all about trying to bring marriage back. Let people think about it and consider it. We want to build a bias. We have to start with building batim. And the Belzer Rebbe, the story is told in Belz, and he would befriend the local policeman, and occasionally the local policeman in the old village of Belz. What's it? Occasionally the policeman would pop in, see the Rebbe, this non-Jewish man, and there would be a bottle of schnapps on the table, and occasionally the policeman would relax, take his hat off, cap off, sit and have a schnapps. He told the Rebbe once, he says, you know, when I take my cap off, I'm no longer a policeman. And the Rebbe apparently told the Hasidim, maybe that's the reason we never take our caps off. Because whether we're inside or outside, whether we're davening in the Beis Midrash or in the Chadrei Chadorim of our home, we are Mamleches Kohanim V'Goy Kodesh. There's so much to understand and appreciate about this mitzvah, this inyan. I want to share with you in the time available a few inyanim, a few ideas of what we can do on a daily basis. Baruch Hashem, many of you have homes. Many of you, Mitzvah Hashem, will build homes. Homes become so essential for the normalcy of your family. Homes become so essential for building yourselves and the future generation. And homes become a catalyst where people, as you've heard from so many speakers, will walk into and say, that's the home I want to build for my future as well. Interestingly enough, it starts the moment we wake up in the morning, because we're doing it to this Yadayim. If you learn the Shulchan Aruch, if you learn the Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah tells you various reasons why a Jew starts the day washing their hands. Of course, you'll know about the Tumah, and of course you know about the fact that because I'm not in control of my hands, I'm never quite sure, maybe I touch something, and therefore you have to wash your hands. But the Mishnah Berurah brings a third reason, which is, before the Kohen was allowed to do avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, had to wash his hands and feet in the Kirsch. The beginning of his day was he had to wash his hands. And we are kohanim. And we start the day by washing our hands as if to say, Sa'u yedechem kodesh u'varuchu es Hashem. Lift up your hands for kodesh and bless Hashem. What does that mean practically? As a Kohen, I wash my hands and I say, what are you going to do with these today? What are you going to do in your home? What are you going to do in terms of extending the blessings you've been given? What are you going to do in terms of showing the example? What are you going to do? And interesting enough, we are not tel yodayim. We take our hands, not the Yeshivat Ohr Somayach taking our hands. And as we raise our hands to make the bracha on the tilis yodayim, we lift up our hands as if to say, I need to ensure that my hands are raised in avodas Hashem, in the home which I've been given. Many years ago, I was at a simcha. There was a special yid there, Dayan Fisher, Zichron Livrocha, and he was a Talmud of the Chofetz Chaim. So I decided with a chaver to go and ask him, Dayan Fisher, tell me something about what it was like to be a Talmud of the Chofetz Chaim. So he says to me, I'll tell you a story. So one morning I woke up, I called my friend Aryeh Grosnos, who would later become one of the great Dayanim of the London Beis Din. Some of you from South Africa may well know his son, who for many years was the Rosh Kollel in the Kollel in Johannesburg. Dayan Grosnos was a young boy learning Yeshivat Radin together with this Dayan Fisher as young boys. And Dayan Fisher turns to young Abe Grosnos and he says, today's our time, today's our day to prepare the Kohen HaGadol for his avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Because as the Chofetz Chaim got older, different people in the yeshiva would take responsibility to look after him. And he says to me, and I watched the Chofetz Chaim in preparing him that day. And he said, you see these hands? You see these hands? These hands washed the Kohen Gadol and prepared him for his avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Now let me tell you a secret, friends. The Chofetz Chaim wasn't the Kohen Gadol. But the Chofetz Chaim prepared himself every day for his avodah. And the avodah began in his own home. The avodah began in his bayis nemon b'Yisrael. The avodah began in his mikdash ma'at. And a person who appreciates that he's a Kohen in his home can become a Kohen who becomes a Gadol. These hands wash the Kohen HaGadol. And the Chofetz Chaim starts in his home and he goes around and changes the world. So then we go downstairs, having washed our hands, and of course we daven, and it's time to have something to eat. So we sit at our dining room table. Before we have bread, of course, we go and wash our hands. Have a look what the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah Berurah says as to why you in 2019 wash your hands for bread. Pila ployim, why you wash your hands for bread in 2019? Because of Srach Tumah is one of the answers, which was that the Kohanim couldn't eat the Truma unless they were in an element of Kedusha. They had to be holy and Rabbi prepared for it. And therefore, when you have bread in your homes, Gad, Levi, Reuven or Shimon, you have to behave like a Kohen and you have to wash your hands as well. Amazing. Because the Chazal want us to understand. Chazal wants us to appreciate. Chazal wants us to remember Avodah. And so much of our home life is centered around appreciating and understanding what it is to be a Kohen. Now your name may not be Kohen. You may not come from Shevet Levi, but you are Mamleches Kohanim. We may not be yet working the Beis HaMikdash, but you're working your Mikdash Ma'at. And when people walk into your Mikdash Ma'at, they want to see a Mamleches Kohanim. You don't need Kiruv training for that. You need Shulchan Aruch training for that. You don't need Kiruv training for that. you need an appreciation and understanding of what our mission is in this world. Our mission is to be kohanim, each one of us. And of course, I can't make hamotzi without first taking my lechem and dipping it in my salt. Why do I have salt before I have the bread, with the bread? And the answer is, V'kol korboncha takriv melech. On every single one of our sacrifice, you have to have salt. And as the Gemara in Brachas, Nun Hey Amud Aleph says, Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayam, when there is a beis hamikdash in existence, mizbeach mechaper, our atonement came about through the mizbeach being mechaper ala odom. Achshav, nowadays, listen to these words, shulchano shel odom mechaper lov. A person's dining room table becomes the point through which he can gain teshuvah, he can get atonement. Shenosu melach meladal, when you share your brachos with other people. So a dining room table is a mizbeach. And the way that we behave in our mizbeach, how we make brachos, the example we give to the children. We have rules in our home. There's no telephones, there's no interruptions during meal times. Do you know how few people eat together in the world today? Do you know how few Hamish and Mishpochas eat together and have meal times today? A meal's an opportunity to interact. A meal's an opportunity to talk about your day. When my eldest daughter was dating beforehand, she had to meet her future father-in-law, happens to be a mashgiach of a well-known yeshiva. And he was a bit nervous to find out that she comes from a very, very busy home. Like, did she have a normal... So he sort of said, like, do you spend much time with your parents? And she said, of course. Whatever my father's doing, anytime, anywhere, between 5:30 and 6:45, he's at home. And then nothing's allowed to interrupt that. Of course, there are times, emergencies, right? But of course, this is my family, this is my home. People become so busy doing so many things that they forgot about the Yesodus. This is my home, this is my family. When one of our kids got engaged, it was all very exciting. My new son-in-law comes into the home, first meal with the girl, we're going to sit down and have supper just before the engagement in our house is going to be. And of course, the phone's going backwards and forwards, and we're having supper together, and nobody's answering the telephone. And the poor guy's not quite sure, so he takes out a phone and he makes a phone call, and it's a little nervous moment there between the newly engaged couple and me. And I said, look, I just have to tell you house rules. House rules. 15 minutes you can use your phone. But right now, we're at the mokum where the mizbeach is mechaper. I can't have any interruptions. We're eating. We're saying brachas. We're sharing our gifts with other people. This is Kedusha. And if we can't have Kedusha in our home, how can we ever hope for having Kedusha in the home of Kol Yisrael? There's a minhag that some have, that 120, when they move from this world, they build their coffin with part of their dining room table. You may have heard such a minhag. I can tell you individuals have done it recently. Why do they want to use their dining room table for their coffin? Because this table has done mitzvah upon mitzvah upon mitzvah upon it. You made brachas upon it. You ate properly. You shared what you had with other people. It's a mizbeach. It's a mizbeach. You don't want to take some remembrance of that with you and build your future existence from that. We say to a young couple, you should be zocher to build a bayis, ne'emon b'Yisrael. And it all starts with the bayis that they're going to build. And the world has gone crazy. It's lost its way. And I have to tell you, friends, I know it sounds a strange thing to say, but when it comes to family, when it comes to mishpacha, it's a bit of an insane asylum out there. It's mamish. Completely crazy. The most precious gift of all, and people aren't investing in it. So we encourage people to build sane asylums. Sane asylums. And a sane asylum starts in the home. People eat together, they communicate together, they laugh together, they talk together, they build self-esteem together. They encourage each other, they love each other. A home which has been Matova Alecha Yaakov Mishkan Nasecha Yisrael. The very essence of what it means to be a Jew, the very essence of our Jewish lives. And it all begins, and it all starts in that precious point. And it's extraordinary because in yesterday's Parsha, of course, yesterday was Shiva Osa B'Tammuz, officially. It's Nidcha, but officially it's Shiva Osa B'Tammuz. We had the Seder of Pinchas. And in the midst of the Seder of Pinchas, we have a strange thing. We're recounting the names of members of Klal Yisrael. And instead of the normal description of the name, you see, Rashi brings it, each one of the names, we don't have time to go into detail, Mishpachas ha-chinuchi. There's a hey and a yud added in each one of the names. At the end of the Sedra, we have a whole list of korbanos. The question is, what is the connection? The beginning of the Sedra is about Pinchas' attack on people who are intermarrying. The middle of the Sedra, we've got the names, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, according as Rashi points it out, that the other people will say, how can you have purity of families when you're in Mitzrayim? They did such terrible things. I'm sure they interfered with our home life. Said HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to put a hey and a yud and a hey at each name to show my identity with them. They were tahor, they were pure families, every one of them. And the end of the Sedra finishes with korbanos. And there's a well-known chazal, you hear it often, at weddings, Sheva Brachos, the ish, the isha, who live together properly, then Shechina is Shroi Beineihem. Because you've got the Aleph Shin Hey, and then you've got the Aleph Yud Shin, and they come together, and the thing that is special is that in the names together, you've got a Yud and Hey put together. So when Ish and Isha, one with a Yud, one with a Hey, come together, you've got Ish, Yud Kei HaKadosh Baruch Hu living together with them. Beautiful. Sadly, when you don't, you've just got the Ish. When there's no... What's the connection with the korbanos at the end? The mashmos of this is, when you have Ish and Isha together, you have Yud Kei together with Ish. That's the ideal. You've got the Yud Kei in the marriage together with the Aleph and Shin. If you don't have the Aleph and Shin, you've only Yud and Hey rather, all you've got is the Ish. But ideally you've got, what's the Ish? The Ish is the fire on the Mizbech. What's the Ish which is on the fire of the Mizbech? The Ish on the fire of the Mizbech manages to burn up all the meat which is put on it, all the flesh and all the innards which are thrown on it. And those who go a little deeper into these inyonim say, the connection with my marriage and your marriage and our homes is, we have to think very hard about the fires in our home. The fires of anger which consume us. Make sure that they're eaten up by the fire of good midas, like the Mizbech was eaten up. The gaiva which destroys the home, selfishness which destroys the home. Those need to be consumed. It's not just the Yud Hey which is part, the Yud K which is part of it. You have the Eish as well. The Eish of the Mizbech which consume things. You want to build a Bayis Ne'eman Yisrael, you have to be aware of those things that need to be consumed. And there's another Eish which we need to bring back into our home as well. And that's the Eish of Zrizus, that's the Eish of Hislavus, that's the Eish of enthusiasm, that's the Eish of excitement, that's the Eish Tomid on the Mizbeach of our lives. Our dining room table becomes a Mizbeach. But there has to be enthusiasm about what we do and what we do it. There has to be love about what we do it and what we do it. And we have to bring our Kodesh Baruch Hu constantly into our homes and into our lives. Now, a number of the droshes have ended by saying, I'm just going to finish with this story. And according to my timing, I think I have to finish at 1:45. Is that correct?
Tomorrow.
What?
Starting this tomorrow.
So let me share with you a little story. As part of a bigger story. It has been a privilege and an honor and a wonderful opportunity to have been involved and had the source of being involved in the Habatzis Torah and Kira for 36 years. Master Solomon said Sei gesund und stark und stärker gleichwood. After the Second World War, the challenge of the Jewish world was what he called inreach. Jews having to rebuild that which was lost. And then we came to the great challenge of the 1960s, 70s and 80s, which I had the zchus, as I mentioned, 40 years ago to be part of here. And that was called outreach. And what an extraordinary zchus it is. Inreach and outreach. Says the Mashgiach, so gesund und stark. What is the challenge of our generation? Outreach. Inreach, outreach, for sure. But we've got to reach higher. We've got to reach for bigger. We've got to reach for better. And it starts in our home. One of the most extraordinary Makaravim that I've met is a person I have the zchus to work with, Rabbi Ivan Ziskin. Rabbi Ivan started his career as an architect. And people would come telling him exactly what they want to have in the house, how it was going to be built, etc., etc. And they said to him, one couple said to him, this is how we want the dining room, this is how we want the lounge. And they looked at him and they said to him, and actually, what we want you to do is build us our home. And Rabbi Ziskin said, I'm an architect. I build houses. You build homes. Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis LeDavid is what we say when we inaugurate our own new homes. When we make our Chanukas Habayis, we say that Tehillah because we recognize it's a building block for the Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis LeDavid that will be sung again very soon. Each one of us has to use our home as a beacon to the world. Each one of us has to use our home to inspire the world around us. But each one of us has to realize the value of Mamleches, Kohanim, V'Goy Kodosh. We should all be zeicha to build that Bayis Nemon, Yisrael, L'Shem, L'Seferes.